This guy was just an ordinary office worker. But every day, Lee Ho-young would run 10 kilometers from 7 in the morning. Then at noon, he would engage in intense swordsmanship training. Even at 5 p.m., he didn't rest, he continued to hit the gym and lift weights for 10 sets. All of this went on continuously for 14 days, just to prepare for the impending end of the world. It all started 14 days ago when every citizen of South Korea suddenly received strange messages warning of disasters and monster appearances. Only Lee Ho-young didn't believe it. Even when watching live stream videos of the monsters, he thought it was just a prank. But on his way home, Lee Ho-young encountered a monster. It was exactly a real goblin. Now, even if he wanted to, he couldn't deny it any longer. The goblin was trapped in an animal snare. Seeing Lee Ho-young, put on a pitiful face, tears streaming down, pleading for his help. He was human, and it was a monster. They were different, how could he be kind enough to save a monster? But after the goblin showed him a family photo, tugging at his heartstrings, Lee Ho-young couldn't turn away. Thinking of how its family might still be waiting for it at home, he decided to be kind just this once. As a result, after saving it, Lee Ho-young was rewarded with a pill called the Silver Goblin's Medicine. He knew the name of the pill because a virtual window suddenly appeared before him with the information. Lee Ho-young thought he was hallucinating, but when he tried to touch the virtual window, his 5 fingers went straight through it. He was still stunned when suddenly there was a loud noise. The balcony window of his house was shattered. Outside, the city was in ruins, plunged into chaos, with people running madly. The ground was shrouded in dust due to the appearance of a skyscraper. From his balcony, Lee Ho-young could see it. In that situation, Lee Ho-young felt he could no longer sit idly by. He made a risky decision. Though unsure if it was the right one, he resolutely put the Silver Goblin's medicine into his mouth. If the world has turned out like this, then now is the time to do something, Lee Ho-young thought. As soon as he bit into the pill, his body began to transform. Every muscle fiber seemed to be buffed, surpassing normal human strength. The holographic screen reappeared before him, stating that Lee Ho-young had obtained the Sage's status window. This would guide him to maximize his chances of survival in the current state. Lee Ho-young reached out to take what had just appeared in front of him. It was a book, and he opened a random page. Instructions appeared. The apocalypse will soon unfold. Time remaining 15 days, 4 hours, 12 minutes, and 52 seconds. Please prepare for the end. Recommended task: strength training, breathing exercises, and learning swordsmanship. This is why Lee Ho-young had been frantically running, training in swordsmanship, and lifting weights for 2 weeks straight. Until 15 days later, the door of the end is opened. But it was a little different from what Lee Ho-young imagined. He expected the apocalypse to be filled with smoke and gunfire. But no, he found himself in a quiet forest edge, with a blunt sword beside him. A series of holographic windows appeared again, announcing that the game would officially begin. Based on analyzed data, Lee Ho-young was assigned a suitable profession and received the profession of swordsman. Please open the status window for more information. Lee Ho-young was overwhelmed by the many virtual windows popping up in front of him. There was too much to read, causing him to feel swamped. He followed the instructions and opened the status window. On it were basic details. He was currently a level 1 swordsman, possessing 2 skills: basic swordsmanship level 1 and Sage's status window. His basic stats included endurance of 14, strength of 11, agility of 7, and intuition of 8. Lee Ho-young held the sword in his hand and swung it a little. This new identity excited him greatly. Soon, a beginner's quest was sent. Lee Ho-young had the right to choose one of 2 options. One was to survive in this forest for 60 minutes. The other was to find the exit and escape. While he was hesitating, the Sage's status window opened. True to its promise, it provided the highest chance of survival guidance for Lee Ho-young. The Sage's advice was for him to use all 60 minutes to farm as many monsters as possible. Choosing the second task would hinder his development in this world. Lee Ho-young obediently followed the advice. He picked up his sword, ready for the monster farming session ahead. The first monster appeared quickly, but it was cuter than Lee Ho-young had expected. It was a level 1 one-horned panda. But cute for less than 2 seconds, the panda's expression suddenly turned fierce. Then it charged as if it wanted to devour Lee Ho-young whole. No longer cute, Lee Ho-young clicked his tongue. He swung his sword, using his basic swordsmanship level 1 skill, and slashed. The monster was cut in half. After defeating it, Lee Ho-young received his first experience points. He didn't think that monster would be defeated with just 1 strike. Perhaps it was still within the beginner guidance phase, so it was weak. However, basic swordsmanship level 1 consumed 2 mana per use, and his total stamina was currently only 10 mana. So Lee Ho-young only had 4 more sword swings left, and he absolutely couldn't make any mistakes. Very quickly, Lee Ho-young defeated 4 more pandas. He leveled up to level 2, with both health and mana fully restored. He also received 2 attribute points. These points were earned each time he leveled up, and Lee Ho-young could use them to increase his stats. He was overjoyed, but before he could finish celebrating, the system sent another notification that left him dumbfounded. His level had been adjusted from level 2 back down to level 1. This was the price for having the Sage's status window. In other words, because he was essentially cheating, his leveling speed was slower than others. Lee Ho-young was utterly shocked, not expecting the system to have such a penalty, making one fall right before the gates of heaven. He opened the status window to check his stats and discovered something strange. Lee Ho-young was demoted, but his accumulated points remained. A thought crossed his mind, and if what he was thinking was correct, then the demotion wasn't a punishment. More accurately, it was a super strong, super special ability. Lee Ho-young continued farming one-horned raccoons. After gaining enough experience, he leveled up to level 2, only to quickly drop back down to level 1. But just as Lee Ho-young expected, he still received 2 more accumulated points. Currently, he has 4 points left. This meant that his level would reset, but his accumulated points kept increasing steadily. The higher the level, the more experience required to level up. By staying at level 1, increasing his stats was much easier compared to leveling up normally. Lee Ho-young was delighted to discover this bug. He started thinking about which stat to upgrade first. There were 4 attributes: stamina, strength, agility, and perception. Lee Ho-young believed that strength and agility were the most essential for a swordsman. Strength increased the power of his attacks, while agility boosted his speed and reaction time for dodging. However, what he needed most now was perception. So, Lee Ho-young decisively used all 4 accumulated points to boost this attribute. As expected, after upgrading my perception, finding raccoons to farm became much easier. But Lee Ho-young started to feel dissatisfied, as the one-horned raccoons were too weak compared to regular monsters, and he could easily defeat them with his default stats. The Sage window advised him to farm as many monsters as possible. The question was how many raccoons he could find in 60 minutes. With his newly upgraded perception, the number of raccoons he defeated skyrocketed. Currently, Lee Ho-young couldn't sense the presence of any more raccoons. That was when the system notified him that he had defeated all the monsters in the area. This was enough to trigger a hidden quest. A gigantic one-horned raccoon suddenly appeared behind Lee Ho-young. It was an elite one-horned raccoon, a level 2 monster, and his task was to defeat it. Lee Ho-young was a bit overwhelmed. The size, speed, and ferocity of this creature far surpassed the weak level 1 raccoons. The elite raccoon dug its claws into the ground to gain momentum, then charged straight at Lee Ho-young. He had no choice but to roll to the side to dodge. This massive creature was fast and strong, like a rhinoceros. Bosses were never easy to handle. Since Lee Ho-young successfully dodged, the raccoon's horn got stuck in the rock wall, which only made it angrier. Lee Ho-young tried to regain his composure. Although it was different from the weak raccoons he had just fought, he still had a chance to win. In the blink of an eye, the elite raccoon charged again, aiming to pierce Lee Ho-young with its horn. But this time was different. He seized the moment and delivered a decisive slash. With his current stats, it only took 1 sword swing for Lee Ho-young to defeat the boss. The reward for completing the hidden quest was gold. His current level was equivalent to level 7, although it still displayed as level 1. Finally, the tutorial was completed. Having finished, Lee Ho-young panted heavily. This was probably the longest hour of his life, but at least the quest was done. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he found himself in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by strangers. Above him, a loudspeaker was broadcasting an announcement. Welcome, everyone, and congratulations on completing the tutorial quest. This is the main hall of the tower. You are currently in Zone C-2567. The main hall, zone. What on earth is that? Lee Ho-young looked around in confusion. There were 14 men and 11 women. They all seemed to have just completed the tutorial and were brought here. Everyone was in a panic. They all wanted to go home. It was understandable. The whole world had changed in a single day. If Lee Ho-young hadn't known about the impending apocalypse from the Sage window, he would have been just as panicked as they were. Lee Ho-young tried to calm himself by thinking that he would survive. Where is this place? A blonde woman asked anxiously. This is the Tower of Destruction, a strange voice replied. Everyone looked around and realized the voice came from a rabbit. But this was no ordinary rabbit, it stood on two legs and wore a sharp-looking suit. It enthusiastically greeted everyone and introduced itself as Kum, a subordinate manager of this tower. The crowd grew more alarmed, they couldn't understand where this rabbit had come from. Some even thought it was just a boy in a costume. Kum sighed, it could understand humans' reactions. I want to ask you something. If this is the apocalypse, why are we here? Asked Lee Ho-young. Kum let out a cheerful sound, pleased that someone had finally calmed down enough to talk to it. Good question, Kum nodded, and then its cheerful demeanor quickly shifted to one of malice and cunning. All 24 of you here will participate in life-threatening games. Upon hearing the words life-threatening, the crowd fell into panic again. Kum explained that all of humanity was now trapped in towers like this one. To survive, they must join forces to overcome the challenges of each floor and ascend the tower. Seeing this, Lee Ho-young continued questioning. Can we return to our normal lives after reaching the top of the tower? I have no idea, Kum replied nonchalantly. Lee Ho-young was at a loss for words. Then what's the point of making us climb this tower? But Kum did not want to answer that question. It only warned that death would always be lurking for those too lazy to climb. Many people had lost their lives during the previous tutorial. This was not just an announcement but a warning. Lee Ho-young suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Kum started speaking again, is there anyone who can defeat me? I must be defeated to go home, and there's a handsome reward for anyone who can take me down. This tiny rabbit might be small, but it's level 55. Lee Ho-young thought this was a trap. From the outside, Kum didn't seem that strong. But he knew there was no way he could beat a level 55 opponent at this point. And it seemed no other player could see its level either. So, Lee Ho-young decided to stay silent and watch the show. But at that moment, the sage's status window popped up again. The guidance was to help manage Kum to return home. What the hell, wasn't this the same as saying, go kill that rabbit? However, the sage's status window never gave instructions that would disadvantage Lee Ho-young. He wasn't sure if he should trust the sage's status window this time. Fuck, what am I supposed to do now? Lee Ho-young thought anxiously. Before he could make a decision, a man stepped forward. I'll do it. If you wish to die, I'll help you fulfill that wish. How about that? He seemed like a man who didn't know his limits. His mocking smile made it clear he underestimated the tiny rabbit before him. Kum let out a cheer, happy to finally go home. The man drew his sword and charged. Don't regret this. Like I'm scared. Before the man's sword could reach Kum, the rabbit's fist flew first. The man with the sword was punched back against the wall behind him. Kum's fist was still smeared with the man's blood. The tiny rabbit suddenly appeared incredibly muscular, and the crowd held their breath in horror. The man had sacrificed himself foolishly. Even Lee Ho-young was shocked to his core. He thought to himself, lucky that he didn't step up earlier. If he had, he might be the one lying on the ground right now. Kum laughed heartily as if nothing had happened. In an instant, it transformed back into its small, mini form. Come on, everyone, it was just an accident. The little rabbit had just sent a big man off to meet his ancestors. But the way it spoke made it seem as light as a feather. Meanwhile, the sage's status window continued to urge Lee Ho-young to help Kum go home. But Lee Ho-young was already scared out of his wits. Does anyone else want to try? Kum's face was full of anticipation. Damn it, is this window tricking me? Lee Ho-young cursed his fate. He truly didn't know whether to step up or not. All he knew was that no one around him dared to step forward. This rabbit was too strong. He began to doubt whether the sage's status window was deceiving him. And why would it deceive him anyway? At Lee Ho-young's most confused moment, the sage's status window activated once again. This time, it revealed a new category. Normally, he could only receive beneficial instructions from the window. But now he had acquired the eyes of the sage, allowing Lee Ho-young to see other status windows. Although he didn't know why this ability suddenly appeared, Lee Ho-young had already seen through the rabbit Kum. So, the guidance window was not deceiving anyone. Lee Ho-young boldly stepped forward and raised his hand. I'll do it, he declared. Kum looked at Lee Ho-young with interest. No need to say it was clear it thought of him as a mere level 1 kid. My level doesn't matter much, does it? Lee Ho-young stated confidently. Seeing his resolve, Kum had nothing more to say and opened its arms wide, welcoming him. Please, Lee Ho-young, hurry and send me home. As he was about to draw his sword, a blonde girl stepped in to stop him. Other players also tried to hold him back. They had seen the man die earlier and didn't want Lee Ho-young to sacrifice himself in vain. But he calmly replied that he had a plan, and everyone should just watch the show. Kumkum, seeing his arrogance, was not pleased at all. It charged forward and, in an instant, transformed into its muscular form. One punch from that form would surely be fatal. Lee Ho-young tried his best to stay calm. He had felt all along that something was off about Kumkum's words. He was sure there were 25 people in this space. But earlier, it had said only 24 players would have to participate in this life-threatening game. That was no simple mistake. Everything about it was deliberate. The reason Kumkum didn't say the correct number was because, from the beginning, there were only 24 people here. Lee Ho-young dodged Kumkum's punch like the wind. The players around him were baffled, and the rabbit didn't understand what had just happened. Indeed, thanks to the eyes of the sage, Lee Ho-young discovered that the man who had charged earlier was just a holographic projection created by Kumkum. The rabbit, seeing Lee Ho-young dodge the attack, cheered, "You're pretty good, Lee Ho-young." And Lee Ho-young had also seen Kumkum's information. Despite being level 55, all 4 of its stats were 0. Why? Because it was also just a projection that would disappear when damaged. Lee Ho-young's sword sliced through the rabbit. Its form slowly faded away, ready to vanish completely. Before disappearing, Kumkum left one final message. "May those with courage always be blessed by fortune." Kumkum vanished, leaving behind a stat point, worth 1 stored point. Lee Ho-young sighed in relief and picked it up. The surrounding players began to wonder how he knew that Kumkum and the man were just projections. Of course, Lee Ho-young couldn't reveal that he had the sage's status window. He explained that earlier, he had seen blood splatter through the blonde girl, Chai-yi-sol. Lee Ho-young thought that if she was so close, her face and clothes should have been covered in blood. So, he figured it was all just a trick. This reason made enough sense, so no one pursued the matter further. But now another problem was arising. A thug-like man named Kim Se-young, level 4, was greedily eyeing the mana core in Lee Ho-young's hand. He claimed that Lee Ho-young didn't deserve it since he only got it by luck. "If I had known, I would have attacked that rabbit myself." Lee Ho-young was visibly annoyed. Kim Se-young looked down on him for completing the tutorial but was still at level 1. He thought Lee Ho-young must either be weak or unable to defeat any monsters and only knew how to run away. Either way, he'd be eliminated soon, so he felt the mana core would be wasted on Lee Ho-young. Lee Ho-young listened to this jerk's rant for a while. He couldn't understand where he got all this arrogance from. Lee Ho-young immediately crushed the mana core in his hand, gaining 1 more stat point. He bluntly stated that he didn't have a habit of handing over his belongings to others. Kim Se-young gritted his teeth and approached him aggressively. "A scumbag like you, greedy too. Are you trying to save face because of your level?" According to Lee Ho-young's experience reading novels, the wisest move now would be to avoid people like this jerk. But just look at his arrogant attitude. It made Lee Ho-young extremely uncomfortable. He didn't know how long he could keep ignoring him. Right at that moment, a new system notification appeared. Players would receive the initial gold they earned from farming monsters. They could use the gold for buying and selling in the shop. And of course, those who farmed the most monsters during the tutorial earned the most gold. The system also revealed that the player with the highest amount of gold in the area had a total of 7,400. Level 4 players like Kim Se-young and Kim Jun-sung only received 1,300 and 1,500 gold, respectively. The top player was Lee Ho-young, but he had no intention of revealing that he had 7,400 gold. Since even a single stat point had already sparked envy, he decided to keep quiet. After collecting their gold, the shop opened. There were 3 crucial things players could do with this gold. First, buy items. Second, upgrade skills. Third, increase stats. The first thing Lee Ho-young did after receiving his gold was to raise all his stats to 20. Even after that, he still had 4,600 gold left. Meanwhile, Kim Se-young was loudly complaining about how expensive it was to upgrade skills. Lee Ho-young, seeing this, remembered to upgrade his basic swordsmanship skill level. He spent an additional 1,500 gold and bought a new outfit for 100 gold. After changing into his new clothes, he looked much more handsome. After all, he couldn't keep wearing his torn gym clothes. "Excuse me," Chai-yi-sol suddenly approached Lee Ho-young. She said she needed some advice, which caught him off guard. He didn't know what kind of advice a level 1 player could give her, but Chai-yi-sol didn't care much about levels. She was just impressed by his courage. Lee Ho-young used his sage's insight skill to check her intentions before asking how much gold she had left. 800. Chai-yi-sol answered without hesitation. This girl was too honest. But Lee Ho-young felt it was still safer to keep his cheat skill a secret. Seeing her low stamina stat, he tactfully asked her a question. Do you like exercising? I think walking is okay. So, your stamina stat must be pretty low, right? Ah, yes, it is. Lee Ho-young advised her to invest her gold in increasing her stamina first. Because even if she used her gold to buy items, she wouldn't be able to use them for long. Chae-Sol nodded, thanking him and saying she would follow his advice. Just as the two finished their conversation, the mission for the first floor was about to begin. The system required them to form their teams of 3. Those without a team would be assigned one randomly. They had 30 minutes to form their teams. This group task appeared earlier than Lee Ho-young had anticipated. He still didn't know anyone here. Player Kim Jun-sung suggested they reveal their professions and form teams based on individual needs. Chae-Sol, a level 3 healer, took the initiative to team up with Lee Ho-young. And he had no reason to refuse a healer. The others didn't want to team up with him, thinking that a level 1 player like him would be the biggest obstacle. Level 4 players like Kim Jun-sung and Seo Junho were relaxed. They had already formed their teams. 30 minutes later, Lee Ho-young was randomly teamed up with the jerk Kim Se-young. The first floor mission officially began. Along the way, Kim Se-young kept grumbling about his bad luck. Having to team up with scum like Lee Ho-young. Even Lee Ho-young couldn't handle this situation. Who would have thought that even though Kim Se-young was already level 4, people disliked him more than Lee Ho-young? In the end, only he was left. Lee Ho-young wasn't sure if he could cooperate with this guy. But at this point, it wasn't about whether he could or not. He had to make it work to survive here. The first floor mission was to eliminate the Cobalt tribe within 12 hours. Kim Se-young enthusiastically took the lead, saying he could handle it alone and that Lee Ho-young should stay out of his way. But this is a group mission, you know. Lee Ho-young voiced his discontent. Hey, loser, Kim Se-young snapped. I'm the one carrying the dead weight here, so could you just shut up? Lee Ho-young shrugged and sighed. Lee Ho-young decided to let Kim Se-young do whatever he wanted for now since the guy was so stubborn. Meanwhile, Chae-Sol felt uneasy, not convinced that this team would accomplish anything worthwhile. Kim Se-young kept leading the way. Along the path, they encountered many bugs, which made Lee Ho-young feel uneasy. Chae-Sol was genuinely worried, but he reassured her that the kobolds were probably only slightly stronger than the one-horned pandas. They were traveling as a team, so the danger level shouldn't be too high. Still, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As soon as Lee Ho-young finished his sentence, the first kobold appeared. Its muscular build, complete with six-pack abs, caught him off guard. These creatures were on a whole different level compared to the pandas. Since the kobold was much stronger than Lee Ho-young anticipated, he and the healer girl had to hide behind a rock to assess their surroundings, knowing there might be more lurking nearby. But Kim Se-young thought the two of them were being cowards. He charged forward, directly confronting the six-pack kobold, throwing a powerful punch, convinced that he had already won. What an idiot, Lee Ho-young thought. Kim Se-young's punch was useless, only serving to enrage the kobold. But Se-young believed it was pretending to withstand the pain, so he kept landing punch after punch. Lee Ho-young could only remain silent, powerless in the face of this fool. Thankfully, he didn't sense any more kobolds nearby. Growing anxious, Chae-Sol began using her healing spells to support Kim Se-young. Lee Ho-young just stood there, watching. To be fair, Kim Se-young's strength was the real deal at level 4. With Chae-Sol's assistance, he could heal continuously and even take down the creature by himself. But Lee Ho-young couldn't help but wonder why Kim Se-young's attacks were doing so little damage to the creature. Could it be some kind of weakening effect or something similar? The sage's window popped up, providing Lee Ho-young with new information. It revealed that kobolds were passive creatures that wouldn't attack unless provoked. In other words, Kim Se-young had foolishly initiated the fight. Lee Ho-young scrolled down the window, and the information in front of him left him speechless. Meanwhile, Kim Se-young continued his relentless assault, but in his clumsy efforts, he accidentally knocked over a tree. The fallen tree hit another kobold, one that was even stronger at level 6. A whole group of kobolds immediately ganged up on the bullying Kim Se-young. He looked around, now desperately needing help from Lee Ho-young, but Lee had already moved away from his previous hiding spot. One of the kobolds raised its baton to attack Kim Se-young. Chae-Sol, seeing this, drew her sword and rushed to his aid, but as a healer, her attack was weak, and she tripped over a rock, face planting into the ground. The kobold shifted its focus toward her, but Lee Ho-young appeared just in time. He tossed an apple in front of the creature, then used his basic sword technique to slice the apple in half. The apple juice splattered all over the kobold, instantly killing it. This marked Lee Ho-young's first kill of a level 6 kobold, something Kim Se-yong hadn't been able to achieve despite all his efforts. The apple was filled with deadly toxins, which was why the bugs they had seen earlier hadn't touched it. Thanks to the guidance of the sage's window, Lee Ho-young learned that kobolds were extremely vulnerable to poison. Using poison was far smarter than relying on physical attacks, and the key to clearing the first floor was those toxic apples. Lee Ho-young kindly helped Cha Yi-sol to her feet, an act that further fueled Kim Se-yong's resentment. Kim Se-yong had struggled for ages without killing a single kobold, while Lee Ho-young, with one swift move, not only achieved the kill but also managed to impress the girl. Watching them happily chatting away while ignoring him entirely only made Kim angrier. "Hey, loser, who told you to steal my kill? Where were you hiding this whole time, only to jump in and slash a couple of times just to steal the kill after I'd almost defeated it myself?" Kim Se-yong furiously accused Lee Ho-young, calling him a scumbag and a lowlife. Lee Ho-young was dumbfounded by the insults. This jerk really could say anything. Fed up, Kim Se-yong stormed off, not wanting to stay near Lee Ho-young for fear of having his achievement stolen again. Of course, it was all a product of Kim's delusions. Lee Ho-young also had no desire to stay close to this jerk. Without Lee, Kim would only find himself at a disadvantage, unable to read dangerous situations. The three of them proceeded toward the kobold village, with Kim Se-yong seething with pride and humiliation. As a well-known fighter, he was desperate to defeat the kobolds and prove himself, but punching alone was ineffective. The kobolds were just as strong and fierce as he was. Meanwhile, Cha Yi-sol and Lee Ho-young were having an easy time, continuously slaying kobolds with the poisoned apples under the guidance of the sage's window. This sight was a heavy blow to Kim Se-yong's pride. He couldn't understand how two weaker players could take down kobolds so effortlessly. Kim Se-yong's stamina was rapidly depleting, and he was losing ground against the monsters. Soon, he was surrounded and beaten up by the kobolds. They repeatedly punched and kicked him until he was too bruised and battered to move. All he could do was curl up and cry as the blows rained down on him. After a while, the kobolds finally stopped. Kim Se-yong looked up to see that the two kobolds who had been punching him were now dead, taken down by Lee Ho-young. Lee offered him a hand, saying, "I let you carry the team for a bit, so how do you feel now?" Kim Se-yong was momentarily at a loss for words, and by the time he managed to react, tears and snot were streaming down his face. "Brother Lee Ho-young, thank you for saving my life. Please accept my deepest gratitude." Kim Se-yong's sudden change in attitude shocked both Lee Ho-young and Cha Yi-sol. But anyway, it was good. After some struggle, they managed to subdue that stubborn guy. Their Floor 1 mission was also completed. The three of them returned to the main hall together. Kim Se-yong was now deeply regretting it. Because, in his delirium, he had called a level 1 rookie sir and even knelt and begged to follow him. After many times of leveling up and being demoted, the system finally let Lee Ho-young reach level 2. But in Kim Se-yong's eyes, he was still just a useless lucky guy. The incident just now made him feel extremely embarrassed. But he always considered himself a man of his word. What has been said cannot be taken back. Therefore, Kim Se-yong's inner struggle was incredibly fierce. The way he was acting looked no different from someone wanting to poop. Cha Yi-sol looked around for a moment and realized that no one else had returned to the main hall yet. "It looks like we're much faster than the others. Fortunately, I found the kobold's weak point." Although Lee Ho-young was very modest, Cha Yi-sol didn't believe it was just mere luck. She felt his observational skills were top-notch. Otherwise, why was he the only one who noticed that those bugs didn't eat the poisonous apples? Seeing how excited she was praising him, Lee Ho-young felt a bit embarrassed. Exploiting the system's bugs made him feel like a fraud. The two stood there talking for a while, then other groups started returning. The next two groups were Kim Jun-sung's and Seo Jun-ho's. Lee Ho-young was sure they had also discovered that the kobold's weakness was the poisonous apples. But he wasn't sure if the remaining groups would make it back safely. Just as Lee Ho-young feared, when the next group returned. They were almost entirely exhausted, and the worst part was that there were casualties. Only 2 of them made it back, and then the loudspeaker began to blare. It announced that all groups had completed the first floor mission. However, several groups still hadn't returned. This meant they had perished during the mission. The system coldly announced that only 6 groups survived. A total of 8 people couldn't make it back. Lee Ho-young's face immediately darkened. He had anticipated that it would be difficult for everyone to return alive. But 8 deaths still shocked him. This was only the first floor mission. How many more people would have to die in the future? And would anyone be able to make it to the top of the tower? After everything was settled, the system began calculating the results of the first floor mission. Lee Ho-young's group was naturally the only one that still had all members and finished the mission the fastest. Kim Se-young was moved to tears. So, this thug-looking guy has a Hello Kitty personality. Due to their performance, each of his group members received 1,000 gold. Currently, Lee Ho-young has a total of 5,000 gold. He still felt it was a bit too little. This gold would be his insurance for survival in the future. And he had to earn more as soon as possible. Who finished first? Kim Jun-sung asked. Lee Ho-young turned around, seeing that everyone's eyes were fixed on him. He thought he had to reveal it this time. After all, they were the second group to return. There was no hiding it. He was about to speak when Kim Se-young quickly stopped him. It was us, ha ha ha, weaklings, the results are obvious, so don't feel too bad. Look at Kim Se-young's demeanor, it seemed like he'd forgotten how he was punched by the kobolds earlier. But it was good, the attention on Lee Ho-young would be reduced. But that was just Lee Ho-young's subjective thought. In reality, people were paying even more attention to him. Why? Because they saw that even after winning first place, he only leveled up once. In the minds of these players, Lee Ho-young was just sleeping and reaping the benefits. The crowd began criticizing him. Cha Yi-sol wanted to speak up but was stopped by him. Lee Ho-young knew full well these people wouldn't listen to anything that pleased them anymore. Seeing the tense atmosphere, Kim Jun-sung had to step in to calm everyone down. Seo Jun-ho did the same, both believing that surviving was already a blessing and that they shouldn't be resentful. Instead, they should unite and continue striving for those who have passed away. These were the 2 highest level players in the area. So, their words carried weight. The crowd stopped criticizing Lee Ho-young. As they were still basking in the victory, the torches in the room suddenly went out. Then they lit up again but with a different color of light. The system issued a new warning, or rather, a new punishment. Because the survival rate of Area C-2567 in the first floor mission was below average. A punishment mission would be applied, initiating the death mission. Everyone began to panic, and the system instructed each person to select a candidate in their mind. The player with the most votes would have to carry out the death mission. The voting period was only 5 minutes long. And anyone who didn't vote would automatically be considered to have voted for themselves. This voting essentially meant death. The countdown began. The players were panicking, looking at each other. Wait. Cha Yi-sol suddenly rushed into the crowd and suggested that everyone vote for themselves. That way, everyone would tie, and no one would have to do this mission. It made sense. But some worried that if they did that, they could all be dragged in, making things even worse. The timer kept counting down, and chaos continued to grow. In this situation, Lee Ho-young was the first to be chosen. Little did he expect that the voting was not anonymous. Seo Jun-ho was the one who cast that vote against him. The atmosphere turned deadly silent. Seo Jun-ho shamefully bowed his head and stammered an apology, but he believed he had to make a choice. Time was not over yet. Cha Yi-sol still wanted to salvage the situation, but Lee Ho-young thought it was useless. The other players said there was no guarantee that her proposal would work. The trust was completely shattered after Seo Jun-ho cast the first vote. Time kept ticking, and the votes against Lee Ho-young continued to rise. In the blink of an eye, 8 people had already voted for him, and he was sure they all had their reasons. But the biggest reason was still that he was at the lowest level here. They had completely abandoned the societal notion that the strong must protect the weak. Instead, it had become the belief that the weak must be eliminated. You're all cruel. How could you do this to Lee Ho-young? Cha Yi-sol yelled angrily. What else could we do? If I'm not careful, I'll die too. I did nothing wrong. Another player shouted back, their virtuous facade finally torn away. Many bluntly stated that with his level, Lee Ho-young would eventually fall to death's grasp. The true nature of each person had been revealed. And now, in the final moments, even Kim Se-young, who had once bowed deeply to thank Lee Ho-young for saving his life, cast his vote against him. Lee Ho-young received a total of 10 votes. It was a harsh reminder that this was truly the end of the world. All the players had finished voting. The gate leading to the death quest slowly opened before Lee Ho-young. Cha Yi-sol couldn't hold back her tears, and the other players were filled with mixed emotions. Only Kim Se-young couldn't hold back his loud laughter. He believed that if Lee Ho-young disappeared, his problems would vanish too. The shame of having kneeled before a low-level rookie would also disappear. The sacrifice had been chosen. The matrix was set up. Behind Lee Ho-young were guilty faces, but relief was more apparent. They avoided his gaze, and he had no other choice but to climb onto the cross. Who knows, maybe at the top of the cross, it wouldn't be death waiting. For the sage's window had given guidance. It encouraged Lee Ho-young to take on the death quest because he had a high chance of completing it. That was all it took. Lee Ho-young suddenly didn't feel afraid anymore. He let out a hearty laugh and stepped through the gate. Awaiting him was likely a well-deserved reward, an ending everyone wished for. After Lee Ho-young stepped through the gate, those left in the main hall each had their feelings. Kim Jun-sung seemed worried and went to console Cha Yi-sol. She was still drowning in sorrow after Lee Ho-young became the chosen one for the death quest. But Kim Se-yong, sitting nearby, remained unfazed, saying Lee Ho-young was only receiving retribution for his foolish actions. What do you mean by that? Cha Yi-sol's displeasure was obvious. Just look at his level, that's all. He only manipulated us to gain benefits for himself. A huge question mark appeared above Cha Yi-sol's head. She couldn't understand how this jerk could be so rude. Cha Yi-sol loudly demanded to know how Kim Se-yong could say that when Lee Ho-young's strength had helped them clear the first stage. But Kim Se-yong kept denying the past. He insisted that Lee Ho-young was just lucky and didn't possess any real power. Didn't he save your life? Cha Yi-sol tried to remind him of that crucial moment, making Kim Se-yong recall the last decisive strike. Thinking back, he still couldn't understand how Lee Ho-young had pulled that off. Could it be that he had some trick to alter his displayed level? Kim Se-yong thought to himself. Unexpectedly, he had guessed correctly. But regardless of the true reason, he genuinely hoped Lee Ho-young wouldn't survive and return. Meanwhile, Kim Jun-sung and Cha Yi-sol sincerely wished for his safe return. After stepping through the gate, Lee Ho-young found himself back in the Cobalt village. This place had now become desolate, like a graveyard. Lee Ho-young wandered around, observing for a while. Everything unfolded just as he had planned, but Kim Se-yong's last action still annoyed him deeply. A group of kobold hunters had returned to their tribe, and a massive kobold stood behind them. They were all furious at seeing their tribe slaughtered. Lee Ho-young's death quest was to defeat this group of kobolds. It seemed difficult since that big one was level 12, and the kobold hunters didn't look easy either. Fortunately, their weaknesses were the same as other kobolds. They were still very vulnerable and easily taken down by poison. Lee Ho-young crushed a poisoned apple and spread the juice evenly on his sword. He mainly focused on the chief kobold. It was commanding all the other kobold hunters and was the toughest opponent he faced at the moment. Anyone else in this situation might have quietly given up, but Lee Ho-young was different. He already had basic swordsmanship at level 2. Thus, when facing these kobold hunters, he didn't encounter too much trouble. A single sword slash was enough. They would fall due to the effects of the poison. Lee Ho-young dealt with the kobolds in the blink of an eye. The only remaining challenge was the boss. He wanted to see just how strong the Death Quest boss would be. Gripping his poison-laden sword tightly, he slashed at the boss, but the strike was blocked. The kobold chief even mitigated the impact by stepping back as their swords clashed. With this kind of thinking, it was too smart for a monster. But for some reason, the kobold chief suddenly fled. Lee Ho-young didn't understand why, but he quickly chased it down, attacking as he ran. The boss's health bar was dropping rapidly. It would soon die if this continued. Lee Ho-young thought this was an easy quest, one that anyone who reached here could complete and claim the reward. Lee Ho-young slashed once more as the kobold chief's health bar was nearing the bottom. But at that moment, something strange happened. His sword seemed to get stuck in its muscles. The kobold chief suddenly raised its head. Above was a full blood moon, and the monster's eyes glowed. It quickly turned and slashed Lee Ho-young with lightning speed. Outside, everyone was getting anxious. Cha Yi-sol couldn't stop praying, while Kim Se-yong looked like he was running out of patience. He was certain Lee Ho-young had already gone to hell, and praying now was just meaningless. At this point, Cha Yi-sol couldn't stand his foul mouth any longer. She got up and started arguing with Kim Se-yong. After a heated exchange, a portal appeared in the center of the hall. The crowd immediately turned their eyes toward it, and the unthinkable happened. The person who stepped out of the portal was Lee Ho-young. He had survived the death mission. Thinking back to that moment, it was insane. The sage's window had warned him to be careful once the kobold chief's eyes turned red. He got hit by a slash, and his health bar immediately dropped to 1/3. Lee Ho-young quickly stopped the bleeding. The monster didn't have much health left either. He only needed to land one precise blow to take it down. But figuring out how to land that precise strike was a problem. The monster charged at him, and Lee Ho-young quickly dodged to the side. Damn, it punched through a tree like it was hitting a piece of tofu. But at that moment, he realized something. A sword might not pierce a wall, but a nail could easily go through it. All this time, he had assumed swords were only for slashing, but that wasn't necessarily true. Lee Ho-young thought of a way to use the monster against itself and finish it in one strike. He stood still, and the kobold chief charged at him, crazed. It stomped hard on the ground to gain momentum and then leapt high. With its body weight, even one punch would be enough to crush him. But Lee Ho-young timed it right, and just as it was about to land, he raised his sword. The monster couldn't resist gravity, and its entire body pierced right through the sword. A sky-shaking scream rang out, and Lee Ho-young burst into laughter and excitement. He had done it. Instantly, the piercing skill was added to his basic swordsmanship. At the same time, his death mission was completed. That was why he could return to the main hall now. As soon as Lee Ho-young stepped out of the portal, Chai-yi-sol, with tears in her eyes, rushed toward him. She opened her arms wide, wanting to embrace him, but was suddenly thrown against the wall by a tremendous force. Chai-yi-sol was stunned, and Lee Ho-young couldn't be more shocked. Because the person hugging him now was Kim Se-young. My dear Lee Ho-young, I knew you could come back, my brother. What the hell, this guy betrayed me faster than my ex ever did, everyone. This damn death mission thing could never stop Big Boss Lee Ho-young, the strongest in the universe. Kim Se-young kept hugging him tightly, talking non-stop. Lee Ho-young clenched his fist, and at that moment, he just wanted to punch this bastard. The other players started to approach him too. Their faces clearly showed doubt and fear. Lee Ho-young, did you complete the death mission? They all breathed a sigh of relief because he made it back. Now, no one had to feel guilty or responsible anymore. But at the same time, they were puzzled. If Lee Ho-young had completed the death mission, he should have gained a lot of experience. Yet his level hadn't changed. Now that they thought about it, it was the same as when he defeated the rabbit Kum. Lee Ho-young bit his lip in silence. He thought he had gotten used to this, but it still felt terrible. There's no place for the weak in this world. As a child, Lee Ho-young consistently topped his school exams. But other kids didn't admire him. Instead, they suspected he cheated. To them, how could an orphan who couldn't even afford extra classes be the top student? They looked down on others just because of their poor backgrounds. It was the same now. Just because his level stayed low, they dismissed all his efforts, thinking he was just lucky. They believed that after passing through the portal, he must have hidden somewhere like a coward to waste time. Then he just walked out as instructed. Otherwise, with his level, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Lee Ho-young's hands clenched tightly. These people were trampling on his hard work. He knew that prejudiced people wouldn't easily change their minds. But before he could speak, Chai-yi-sol stepped in for him. Shut up, her hair was messy from the push earlier by Kim Se-young. Chai-yi-sol was furious. Why do you guys always doubt him? Hadn't he already proven that he survived and returned from the death mission? Her resolute stance made Lee Ho-young feel a little touched. But soon after, Kim Se-young killed the mood again. That's right, sis. That's right, sis. We should be throwing a party to celebrate Big Boss Lee Ho-young's glorious return, the strongest in the universe. But these guys ruined the vibe. Are you all out of your minds? Oh, Kim Se-young's ridiculous attitude left Lee Ho-young helpless, and the other players didn't know what to say. This guy was the craziest in this whole scene. But even so, Lee Ho-young felt somewhat at ease. At least there were still people like this. For instance, Chai-yi-sol still supported and believed in him unconditionally. But to go further, Lee Ho-young needed to do something. He had to prove himself in a way that would convince the other players. After thinking for a while, Lee Ho-young decided to speak up. Everyone, I have something I want to show you. He pulled out a sword. It was the unyielding sword, a rare level weapon he looted from the kobold chieftain. With this, the attack attribute would increase by 15%, and the other players were astonished. This weapon was clearly in a different league compared to their weapons. Chai-yi-sol said, "You truly are extraordinary." Kim Jun-sung nodded in admiration. It's just luck. Such an excellent item as a reward is far more valuable than a few experience points for our survival. Lee Ho-young did not like hearing the words "our survival." His attitude changed immediately, as if these people had forgotten that they were the ones who had pushed him into a near-death situation. As soon as Lee Ho-young spoke, many felt uncomfortable. Seo Jun-ho felt the most regretful, as the first vote was his. You're right. After a period of inner struggle, Seo Joon-ho decided to speak up. Earlier, he had justified his actions as unavoidable. But in the end, it was just pure selfishness. He had thought that as long as it wasn't him, it was fine. Even though he knew that voting for the lowest level player was pushing them to the edge. Yet Seo Joon-ho did it to ensure his survival. When Lee Ho-young stepped into the gate, Seo Joon-ho had always felt very guilty. And when he stepped out, it was like a heavy burden had been lifted from his heart. But even so, the feeling of guilt had been lingering with Seo Joon-ho all this time. He went up to Lee Ho-young and bowed 90 degrees, apologizing. I am truly sorry, I am also really glad you came back. Tears streamed down Seo Joon-ho's face, and many other players also began to feel uncomfortable with the situation. But after all, there are always clueless people. For example, the brown-haired woman standing next to Kim Joon-sung now. Why make such a big deal out of it? After all, someone had to do that mission. He didn't die and even came back with a rare item. Isn't that great? I can't understand how she can say such nonchalant words. Seo Joon-ho turned to her and loudly questioned whether she felt any guilt at all. But in response, the woman named Seo Yoon-jin just laughed. That's not something you should say since you were the first to vote. Seo Joon-ho was silenced, and although Seo Yoon-jin was unreasonable, what she said wasn't wrong. Seo Joon-ho was about to charge at her when Lee Ho-young stopped him. He said that he was not doing this to criticize anyone, but to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Through this death mission voting, he realized that the tower was trying to divide the players. And many others had also noticed this. It created distrust among people, caused conflicts, and took pleasure in watching humans kill each other. I believe that my return after the death mission is an opportunity. I have proven that our actions can counter the tower's intentions. Lee Ho-young's words made perfect sense. The crowd fell silent once again. After a while, Kim Joon-sung stepped forward to ask if he had any plans. Indeed, Lee Ho-young did not have a specific plan yet. He only knew that he needed to find a way to ensure as many people survived as possible and continue climbing the tower. He believed that if they climbed higher, one day when they reached the top, they would regain their lives. Lee Ho-young's words sounded like a speech. His words were gradually moving those who had previously looked down on him. Cha Yi-sol took the opportunity to say that everyone needed to unite. Seo Joon-ho saw how the two of them were and continued to cry. Lee Ho-young thought to himself, truly a generous man. We shouldn't judge him by something trivial like level. As everyone started to agree, a giggle rang out. It was Kum, he had returned. Kum had returned. Unfortunately, this time the mission was a survival game. The 4 words, survival game, made Lee Ho-young feel extremely uneasy. Kum quickly confirmed his fears were correct. Their second floor mission was an all-out brawl among everyone present. Specifically, there would be 16 players and 16 of their doppelgangers in this mission. So there would be a total of 32 participants, and the condition for completion was to eliminate all the doppelgangers. The tricky part was that the doppelgangers didn't just have the same stats, but their memories were similar too. The most brutal rule was that there would be no rewards for eliminating a doppelganger. But if a player eliminated another player, they could take their stats and gold. Finally, if 30 minutes passed without a single death, all players would be summoned to the Grand Hall to face a disaster. This was telling the players to kill each other. To clarify what that disaster was, Kum summoned the monster they would have to face. Lee Ho-young gritted his teeth in anger. Asking them to face this monster was like asking them to rush to their deaths. The monster's arrival caused a massive shockwave. No wonder Kum called it a disaster, and the other players were equally stunned. They had just cleared the first floor, how could they defeat such a terrifying monster? Some people started crying, and Lee Ho-young realized the situation was spiraling out of control. Everyone was panicking. The monster attacked as soon as it appeared. Lee Ho-young immediately rushed in and saved a player who was nearly crushed. The second floor mission hadn't even officially started. What the hell was that bastard Kum doing? Looking back, Lee Ho-young saw Kum laughing gleefully. This was a threat to make them take the mission seriously. So now they just had to go with the flow. After all, the monster wouldn't kill anyone, it was just here to intimidate. Behind them, the monster punched the ground hard again. A few players were sent flying into the air. Kim Joon-sung and some others realized they couldn't stand by any longer. They started launching counterattacks. But the monster was as tough as concrete. Kim Joon-sung wasted a bunch of arrows but still couldn't take it down. Damn, this isn't just a threat, is it? It wants to kill us. Lee Ho-young gritted his teeth in frustration. Meanwhile, Chai Yi-sol was continuously healing the other players, but her mana was almost depleted. So far, no one had been fatally injured, but if this continued, it was only a matter of time. In the blink of an eye, the monster was about to attack again. Lee Ho-young quickly signaled everyone to retreat. He didn't have time to care what others thought anymore. Despite Seo Jun-ho shouting at him to dodge, Lee Ho-young still bravely charged forward with his sword. If he didn't defeat the monster, everyone here would die. Lee Ho-young combined the power of the unrelenting sword and the thrusting technique he had just learned. Without thinking, he threw all his strength into charging at the monster, hoping his technique would have some effect. As soon as his piercing strike was unleashed, the monster vanished. Lee Ho-young was stunned. Everything had happened too quickly. He wasn't even sure if he had hit it. Was he really strong enough to take down that monstrous beast in a single strike? The other players were equally shocked for a few seconds. Then they started cheering Lee Ho-young's name, calling him their savior, but Lee Ho-young wasn't feeling great. The system notified him that he would be exhausted for 3 minutes because he had used power beyond his limit. As soon as he read the message, Lee Ho-young collapsed. Only one thought lingered in his mind. I'm done for. When he regained consciousness, the other players were gathered around, looking worried, with various expressions on their faces, the most dramatic of all being Seo Jun-ho, who looked at Lee Ho-young as if he were staring at a living saint. Unbelievable, Lee Ho-young, you are incredibly strong yet so humble. Did you know? That finishing move on the monster was perfect. Lee Ho-young asked in confusion, what happened? What about that giant monster? At this moment, Kum jumped out again, announcing that the giant monster had been recalled. This round of challenges was just to give the players a thrilling experience. In reality, the monster wouldn't have harmed them. Lee Ho-young didn't know whether to feel relieved or disappointed. He felt like they had been fooled by this rabbit time and time again. But indeed, standing on the brink of life and death had brought the players closer together. Lee Ho-young hadn't even caught his breath when Kum's expression changed again. He coldly announced that the rule of someone having to die every 30 minutes was still in effect. And those who were now standing shoulder to shoulder could very well be plotting each other's deaths. After saying this, he left, leaving the players in a state of uncertainty. So the second floor mission would still proceed with the brawl and the doppelgangers. The confusion quickly took over again, and someone suggested creating a common password. But others argued that this plan was useless since the doppelgangers had their memories too. Lee Ho-young, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up, saying he had a plan. This time, leave the mission to me alone. As soon as he said that, all 15 remaining players were stunned. Lee Ho-young said that everyone else didn't need to do anything except run to the highest point of the second floor. If you see someone wandering outside, they might be a doppelganger, and you should kill them on sight. That was the plan suggested by An Zhao. A suspicious man spoke up. He is Ansei Chang, level 9, a former Special Forces member. And also a survival expert. Seo Yun-jin wasn't very trusting either. She believed Lee Ho-young was indeed much stronger than his level indicated. But they had no reason to follow his plan unconditionally. Troublemakers exist everywhere. Lee Ho-young ignored her. Instead, he continued sharing his reasoning. Do you all remember what Kum just said? Earlier, Kum announced that if a player takes down a doppelganger, there will be no rewards. But if a player kills another player, they will receive gold and that person's attribute points. This means that the person standing next to you could be trying to kill you at any moment. It sounds like that rabbit is telling us to eliminate the doppelgangers. But its real purpose is to make us slaughter each other to gain experience points. I don't want to become the plaything of the tower's managers anymore. So I've found the best solution for the current situation. Is it as good as he says? Seo Yun-jin still decided to resist till the end. Kim Jun-sung, standing next to her, thought for a moment. Then he raised his hand to show his support for Lee Ho-young's plan. Anyway, with this method, they could minimize casualties. But, Lee Ho-young, if you're going to take on that role, then you must have a way to identify the doppelgangers, right? Kim Jun-sung was indeed sharp. Lee Ho-young possessed the sage's eye, so he naturally knew who was a player and who was a doppelganger. But he couldn't reveal that information. The second floor mission was about to begin. Please kill at least one person within 30 minutes. The number of players and doppelgangers remained the same, both sides had 16 people each. Kim Se-young was struggling, climbing to the highest point of the mountain while constantly grumbling. He thought Lee Ho-young's plan was too risky, and besides, he preferred fighting to climb mountains. Suddenly, Kim Se-young heard footsteps behind him. He quickly hid behind a tree. His fists were ready, but the voice that followed made him pause his actions. Kim Se-young, you're so big, how can you hide behind a tree like that? It was Lee Ho-young. Kim Se-young immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, I thought it was something serious. So it's you. Boss, I almost thought you were a doppelganger. Before Kim Se-young could finish his sentence, he was slashed in half. Lee Ho-young's eyes and actions were decisive. It was unclear whether it was personal vengeance or if the person in front of him was indeed a doppelganger. To find out more about Lee Ho-young's doppelganger hunt, stay tuned for the next episode. Speaking of which, this ability to distinguish doppelgangers didn't come naturally. Otherwise, Lee Ho-young wouldn't have confidently taken on the responsibility of eliminating them. Before the mission officially began, he spent a fortune on upgrading his intuition attribute. He upgraded it so much that the system recorded him as the first player to reach the keen sense threshold of 50 points, and his reward was the perfect sense skill. That skill allowed him to know detailed information about anyone within a certain radius. In other words, thanks to that skill, Lee Ho-young could immediately identify who was a doppelganger. However, the price was steep. To upgrade his stats, he had to spend half of his gold. Just after obtaining the skill, Lee Ho-young heard a familiar voice. It was Kim Se-young's. At first, Lee Ho-young was pleased to hear Kim Se-young's voice even from a considerable distance. This indicated that his senses had greatly improved. But as he got closer, Lee Ho-young suddenly smelled a foul odor, so strong that he had to cover his nose. That bastard was indeed a doppelganger. That explains the earlier scene we just saw, where Lee Ho-young successfully eliminated his first doppelganger. This gave him hope. If others followed his instructions correctly, the mission could be completed smoothly. But just seconds later, a message popped up, unsettling him. A player had died. Lee Ho-young did not know whether that life was taken by a doppelganger or if players had started killing each other. And if it was the latter, who had done it? He bit his lip, torn between pain and helplessness. Now, Lee Ho-young had no way to confirm what was happening. There was only one way to find the murderer as quickly as possible or to eliminate all the doppelgangers and end this mission soon. But reality was not as simple as Lee Ho-young imagined. For every doppelganger he killed, another player lost their life. Lee Ho-young climbed up a large tree, scanning the surroundings, hoping to spot the murderer. Thanks to his keen senses, he finally saw a doppelganger that had just killed a player. Lee Ho-young didn't have time to think, he rushed forward. It was the doppelganger of player Go Young-woo, level 5. Lee Ho-young delivered a fatal blow, finally relaxing. He had briefly considered the possibility that his own doppelganger was the murderer. But fortunately, that didn't happen, and Lee Ho-young managed to intervene before it could cause too much damage. On the ground lay player Lee Byung-chul, level 4, lifeless. Lee Ho-young suddenly noticed something wrong. The weapon the doppelganger wielded was a long, blunt sword. But Lee Byung-chul had died from a deep, small wound, clearly inflicted by an arrowhead. Realizing this, Lee Ho-young instinctively turned around. In the distance, a man with a bow raised was Kim Jun-sung. Lee Ho-young quickly hid behind a large tree and used his skill. But the Kim Jun-sung before him was indeed a player. Moreover, an arrow was embedded in his shoulder. Perhaps this young man had been shot by his own doppelganger. "Who's out there?" Kim Jun-sung shouted. From his tone, it was clear that he was extremely tense. "Kim Jun-sung, it's me. Are you okay?" Lee Ho-young stepped out from behind the tree where he had been hiding. Even after seeing clearly that it was Lee Ho-young, Kim Jun-sung couldn't relax. Though he didn't want to doubt Lee Ho-young, he couldn't tell who was a player and who was a doppelganger. Lee Ho-young pointed at the corpse of the doppelganger Go Young-woo beside him. "The one I just took down is a doppelganger. Does that prove to you who I am?" Kim Jun-sung lowered his bow and sighed. He wanted to warn Lee Ho-young to be careful of his own doppelganger. But before he could get the words out, his whole body lost strength, and he collapsed backward. Lee Ho-young quickly rushed over, and when Kim Jun-sung regained consciousness, Lee Ho-young had already carried him a long way. He was deeply remorseful for letting his own doppelganger slip away. Just the thought of someone looking exactly like him wandering around harming people was terrifying. Kim Jun-sung was so angry that his whole body trembled, and he began to cry. "It's not your fault," Lee Ho-young tried to console him. It wasn't Kim Jun-sung's fault. He had done his best, and they were all victims of the tower. They had only taken a few steps when they encountered two others. It was Chai Yi-sol and Seo Jun-ho, and they were overjoyed to see that both were still safe, especially Seo Jun-ho. He couldn't hold back his emotions since the new mission had just begun and already two people were dead. "Kim Jun-sung, Are you hurt? Let me heal you, Chai Yi-sol offered. But Lee Ho-young quickly pushed Kim Jun-sung back and drew his sword. The reason was simple: the two people in front of them were doppelgangers. Once discovered, both of them charged forward without hesitation. The doppelganger of Seo Jun-ho rushed madly at Lee Ho-young. Despite being injured, Kim Jun-sung had to muster the strength to face the other doppelganger. Suddenly, an ominous feeling struck Lee Ho-young. Why would these doppelgangers be bold enough to appear before him? Especially when one of them had Chai Yi-sol's memories. So it had to know just how strong he was. As he thought this, the doppelganger of Chai Yi-sol was already trying to ambush him from behind. The doppelganger of Seo Jun-ho quickly moved to assist. Attacked from both sides, Lee Ho-young couldn't fight back. He struggled to dodge the attack, but as soon as his feet hit the ground, an arrow shot past him like lightning. It grazed Lee Ho-young's left cheek, confirming his earlier suspicion. Damn, that's a shame, I thought it was checkmate. Yes, the Kim Jun-sung before him, the one Lee Ho-young had just saved and painstakingly carried here, was the real traitor. Ever since Lee Ho-young had taken down Go Young-woo's doppelganger, he had been carefully watching from the sidelines. Upon entering the game, Kim Jun-sung's profession was a defender-attacker hybrid. But his previous job was as a fisherman in Wanyang, and his twisted hobby was attacking others with fish hooks. He took great pleasure in trapping others and watching them die slowly. Oops, I accidentally spoke in my local dialect. Guess I got a little too excited, Kim Jun-sung grinned maliciously. I'd love to know how you feel right now. Frustrated, hopeless, or furious? His laughter grew increasingly sinister. Lee Ho-young sighed, realizing that this wasn't a doppelganger. This was indeed Kim Jun-sung, but this was his true nature. He had long suspected that this person was more complex than he seemed, but he didn't expect him to be this deranged. Seeing Lee Ho-young remain calm, Kim Jun-sung grew curious. How can you be so composed? Did you already know I'd stab you in the back? Well, I can see other people's status windows. Lee Ho-young replied honestly. He felt no need to hide the truth from someone who would soon die by his hand. Earlier, while helping Kim Jun-sung, he had glanced at his status window. That's when he discovered that Kim Jun-sung's stats had increased significantly. There was no explanation for this other than him being the killer. The two doppelgangers standing next to Kim Jun-sung paled at this revelation. But the true culprit remained expressionless. I'm finding you more and more interesting. Did the tower favor you? I'm jealous, Kim Jun-sung sneered as he gripped his sword, ready to fight at any moment. Lee Ho-young didn't want to waste time chatting with this lunatic, but he genuinely wondered what drove him. Could Kim Jun-sung be so obsessed with gold and stats that he'd go mad? So much so that he'd kill everyone around him. Lee Ho-young pointed his sword directly at his opponent and fiercely questioned him. But Kim Jun-sung felt no shame for his actions. Do I need a reason? Here, every time I kill someone, not only am I not punished, I'm rewarded. So why shouldn't I take them out? A true psychopath, Kim Jun-sung drew his bow and shot an arrow at Lee Ho-young. Lee Ho-young gritted his teeth, his emotions in turmoil. From the beginning, Kim Jun-sung pretended to be kind, generous, and capable. Lee Ho-young had even worried that he had been pushed to the brink, causing his mentality to shift. But Lee Ho-young had been wrong. From the very start, he was a bastard. All that effort to build a good image was just to wait for the right moment to stab someone in the back. Lee Ho-young tilted his head to dodge Kim Jun-sung's arrow. He charged at his opponent, and the two doppelgangers rushed in as well. No words could accurately describe Lee Ho-young's feelings at that moment. This bastard, with his love for brutality, did not deserve to live. Facing three opponents alone was no easy task. Just after avoiding a slash from doppelganger Seo Jun-ho, Lee Ho-young had to deflect several arrows shot by Kim Jun-sung. The speed of Kim Jun-sung's attacks was indeed astonishing. He also hid many deadly moves, pushing Lee Ho-young into a difficult situation. Currently, his opponents included a melee swordsman and a high-level healer behind him. In front, there was another powerful archer. This lineup had no gaps at all. Any slight mistake would mean Lee Ho-young's death. I don't know how you managed to convince these two doppelgangers. But it seems you prepared quite thoroughly for an ambush. If you want to catch a big fish, you naturally need to be well prepared. Kim Jun-sung, with a thick skin, considered Lee Ho-young's words as praise. He thought that Lee Ho-young would soon be sacrificed under this triple assault. But unexpectedly, Lee Ho-young was even better than he imagined. Kim Jun-sung spun an arrow in his hand and licked it perversely. It's great because I can watch you suffer in pain longer. Truly a lunatic. After Kim Jun-sung said this, he quickly notched 3 arrows. Under his direction, the 2 doppelgangers also launched a new attack. Lee Ho-young was being attacked from 3 sides simultaneously. If it were anyone else, they would surely be dead by now. But who was Lee Ho-young? The protagonist's aura wouldn't let him fall now. His perfect sense skill was activated. Lee Ho-young could instantly see all the stats of his opponents. This was indeed a well-coordinated enemy team. However, Lee Ho-young's stats still far surpassed theirs. First, he swung his sword and broke the 3 arrows shot by Kim Jun-sung. Then he turned and delivered a slash to the chest of Seo Junho's doppelganger. The doppelganger of Chai Yi-sol tried to heal, but her healing arm was quickly severed. This overwhelming force was absolute power. All previous plans were insignificant. The 2 doppelgangers were swiftly eliminated. The number of remaining players was now 14, and the doppelgangers were 11. In front of him now was only Kim Jun-sung. He began to fear. He even went so far as to kneel and plead desperately. "Spare me, Lee Ho-young." Kim Jun-sung cried out, his face smeared with tears and snot. "I was just momentarily blinded by the hefty reward. Seeing how kind you are, I wanted to do things that went beyond limits." Kim Jun-sung continued to beg, cry, and plead. His whole body trembled, but when Lee Ho-young approached, he suddenly stood up. I knew this guy was just pretending to be in pain. As soon as the opponent was within range, he quickly grabbed a sharp arrow, intending to kill Lee Ho-young. But Lee Ho-young's sword was faster than Kim Jun-sung's arrow. One strike from the sword and his body was split in half. Even at that moment, Kim Jun-sung's face still had a strange expression with a devilish smile. He knew he had lost. And his final thought was, "Damn, this kid is not an ordinary big fish." After defeating Kim Jun-sung, Lee Ho-young felt very bad. He had just killed a living person with his own hands. But before he could mourn for long, a new notification arrived. It turned out that Kim Jun-sung had also received a hidden quest to become a stellar assassin. Now that he was dead, Lee Ho-young was given the chance to replace him as a stellar assassin. If he accepted, Lee Ho-young would receive enhanced stats. Not only that, he would also get the assistance of the doppelganger. Now he understood why the 2 doppelgangers had obeyed Kim Jun-sung so well. The benefits of becoming a stellar assassin didn't stop there. If accepted, Lee Ho-young would receive legendary equipment, legendary skills, increased stat points, and the unique attributes of a stellar assassin. These benefits were so absurdly attractive that Lee Ho-young swallowed and longed for them. Not because he was greedy, but because he feared a worse scenario. He had never liked the idea of killing doppelgangers from the start. He could easily defeat them since he knew they weren't human. But he would face much more difficulty if he had to fight real humans for their stats. And if Lee Ho-young declined, someone among the remaining players might accept the challenge. They would replace Kim Jun-sung as the second stellar assassin. He was sure that few would turn down such benefits and skip the challenge. It was undeniable that these benefits were extremely tempting. Looking at the series of flashing windows before him, Lee Ho-young couldn't help but raise his hand. But at the crucial moment, his reason pulled him back. Lee Ho-young declined the challenge. He would not allow himself to become a lunatic like Kim Jun-sung. Lee Ho-young continued to climb to the highest peak. Chai Yi-sol and the others had already gathered there. As soon as they saw him, Kim Se-yong displayed an exaggerated expression. Like a lovesick fool seeing his beloved. "Lee Ho-young, why are you so slow?" Lee Ho-young suddenly felt nauseous. At this moment, he wanted to accept that challenge and become a lunatic to get rid of this idiot. But no, who would do that? He checked again, confirming that all the remaining players had gathered here. And of course, their doppelgangers were here too. They saw their doppelgangers for the first time, with complex emotions. "Can you distinguish who the doppelganger is?" One player asked. "Yes," Lee Ho-young nodded. But before he could speak further, a voice identical to his came from behind. "Thank you all for following my plan." Lee Ho-young cursed inwardly. Although he knew this would happen, he still couldn't accept it immediately. Since his own doppelganger had appeared as well. Even in appearance and mannerisms, it was identical. It even had his memories and thoughts. The other players, seeing 2 Lee Ho-youngs, began to panic. Their reaction was understandable since they didn't know whom to trust now. "Did you anticipate this situation, Lee Ho-young?" Lee Ho-young faced his doppelganger, his emotions complex. Things had become even more confusing. That was also why he wanted to deal with his doppelganger before reaching the top of the mountain. However, the plan was disrupted by an unexpected variable, Kim Jun-sung. Now it was a chess game between him and his own doppelganger. Lee Ho-young had yet to figure out a solution. Meanwhile, the remaining players were in chaos. They wanted a proper explanation as they didn't know who the real Lee Ho-young was. Have you already eliminated the doppelganger as mentioned earlier? Which doppelganger has been killed? Explain, Lee Ho-young. As of now, 3 players have fallen along with 5 doppelgangers. That made a total of 8 people. If you reveal the names of the 5 eliminated doppelgangers, you can prove you're a player with those 5. The most troublesome part was that Lee Ho-young's doppelganger had the same ability. It used the missing faces here to accurately name the deceased. Even at the same time that Lee Ho-young spoke, which only added to everyone's confusion. This was the crux of the problem. Because of their shared thinking, it was very difficult for Lee Ho-young to prove that he was the real one. And that doppelganger was very clever. Before Lee Ho-young could come up with a solution, it spoke first. Everyone, think carefully. Kim Se-young and Cha Yi-sol are my teammates on the first floor. We had a certain level of trust, and yet, among the doppelgangers, I found them first and killed their doppelganger. What are the odds of that happening? Lee Ho-young knew that by allowing the doppelganger to speak first, he was already at a disadvantage. But he truly had not found a suitable explanation. Before he could react, the bastard pointed at him and continued speaking. Moreover, if what this impostor said was true, then the doppelganger over there is the real one, and who killed Kim Jun-sung. He was the highest level among us, a leader who always encouraged us during difficulties. This was truly lethal because Kim Jun-sung, in everyone's eyes, was exactly as described. No one could imagine that Kim Jun-sung was a crazed murderer. And if they did not trust the person who was blabbering, then they could not truly trust Lee Ho-young either, since he had personally dealt with Kim Jun-sung. The atmosphere quickly became chaotic, which was exactly what the doppelganger wanted. He only had Lee Ho-young's memories before the challenge started. Therefore, he didn't know how Kim Jun-sung had fallen. But after a moment, people's hearts began to tilt towards him. The only remaining task was to add fuel to the fire, driving the real Lee Ho-young to a dead end. It seems you've already confessed while hastily convincing everyone to side with you. That doppelganger's confident demeanor was indeed quite convincing. Kim Jun-sung's old teammates immediately drew their swords. There was no more discussion. Defeat that impostor and eliminate the remaining doppelgangers. Don't be ridiculous, daring to call us fake like this. Kim Se-young wouldn't back down either, shouting. Cha Yi-sol and Seo Jun-ho also agreed that they couldn't listen to just one side. They needed to hear both sides to conclude. But others thought there was no time left to do so. Some people could only hold their heads in confusion, causing the situation to become chaotic. Even Lee Ho-young was somewhat surprised by the intelligence of this doppelganger. Praising him was like praising himself. But this was the best course of action given the current situation. He took a few steps closer to his doppelganger and then spoke slowly. Lee Ho-young admitted that he had taken action against Kim Jun-sung. What's this? Are you surrendering? How disappointing, you doppelganger. The bastard pressed on. Lee Ho-young discovered that the memories possessed by his doppelganger only extended up to the start of the mission. Therefore, there were things even it couldn't know. As Lee Ho-young spoke, he took a few more steps forward. His hand was already reaching for the hilt of his sword. I did indeed kill him because Kim Jun-sung is a traitor. His speed was so swift that it cut through the air. The doppelganger didn't react in time, and neither did anyone else. Kim Jun-sung's doppelganger was struck deeply across the chest. What the hell are you doing? Kim Jun-sung's doppelganger fell, causing many to panic, including Lee Ho-young's doppelganger. He drew his sword, ready to fight Lee Ho-young. But at that moment, Seo Jun-ho suddenly spoke with great caution. He had quietly guessed that the one who had just acted was the real Lee Ho-young. Since Lee Ho-young had gathered everyone, he had created a situation that favored the players. Once a doppelganger killed a player, the system would immediately issue a warning that a player had been defeated. But when Kim Jun-sung fell, that announcement didn't appear. Furthermore, if Lee Ho-young could identify who the doppelganger was, he could certainly use the method of killing the doppelganger to prove that he was not a fake. But Seo Jun-ho was puzzled by one thing. Why did Lee Ho-young call Kim Jun-sung a traitor? Has Kim Jun-sung harmed people? Seo Jun-ho asked cautiously. Yes, Lee Ho-young answered without hesitation. He also recounted that Kim Jun-sung was a demon disguised as a human, although he didn't know how many would believe him. Indeed, this made Seo Yun-jin tremble with anger. It was unclear if it was her or her doppelganger. Kim Jun-sung was the perfect god in her eyes, and she wouldn't allow Lee Ho-young to insult him. All that was known was that Seo Yoon-jin, with a face full of rage, charged at Lee Ho-young with her sword. But before she could reach Lee Ho-young, Seo Yoon-jin was struck down by an arrow. Turning around, she was stunned to see that her attacker was Kim Jun-sung, her beloved. Or more precisely, his doppelganger. A player had been defeated, and the announcement immediately appeared. The price of infatuation was being sent to meet one's ancestors by a lover. Now it was clear that Seo Yoon-jin was the real deal, but she had fallen. Lee Ho-young gritted his teeth and raised his sword. He didn't think this bastard still had the strength to move. Kim Jun-sung's doppelganger suddenly laughed maniacally. It was just as mad as the original. At that moment, Kim Jun-sung's doppelganger was attacked from behind by a level 9 player named On Se-chang. He was a former Special Forces member and currently a warrior. Lee Ho-young, I'm sorry for doubting you, what should we do now? The crowd began to fall into chaos again. After this event, they identified who the real Lee Ho-young was. But they still didn't know who the real players were around them. When all eyes turned to Lee Ho-young, he suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu. Behind those gazes could be sharp daggers, similar to when they had pushed him into a death mission. Finally, Lee Ho-young slowly spoke. Now I will tell everyone my final plan. Since things have come to this, it's all or nothing. Lee Ho-young's doppelganger still wanted to stop him. It attempted to ambush him from behind, but Lee Ho-young raised his sword to block it. The remaining doppelgangers began to attack the players frantically. But Lee Ho-young knew they wouldn't win. Before the mission started, everyone had used gold to upgrade their stats. In other words, the players were now stronger than the doppelgangers. Indeed, they completed the mission, but no one was happy. If it hadn't been for Kim Jun-sung's betrayal, Lee Ho-young could have helped everyone complete the mission without casualties. The most saddened and disappointed now was On Se-chang. Since he was on the same team as Kim Jun-sung, Lee Ho-young also felt empty. After all, his goal was to clear the second floor without any loss of life. If that's the case, the situation in other towers might be even worse. Because aside from Lee Ho-young, there might be no one else who possesses the strategy book. And it was only natural that some plan clouded by greed could turn someone into a ruthless killer. Lee Ho-young knew that from now on, the battles would be even more difficult. His abilities were still too weak. But he believed that there must be a reason for fate to grant him the ability to read that strategy book. It was Lee Ho-young's advantage and the responsibility he carried. As long as other players had faith in him, he would strive to save as many people as possible. Before Lee Ho-young could think any further, someone suddenly appeared in his line of sight. It was On Se-chang. Thank you, Lee Ho-young. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have survived. He bowed deeply and sincerely expressed his gratitude. Everyone played their part according to my plan. Although you contributed the most, you are still at level 2, so you must have received some special ability. In return, your level will increase slowly. On Se-chang's words hit the nail on the head, and Lee Ho-young could only remain silent. This man had impressive attention to detail and decision-making ability. He was also a former Special Forces operative and a survival expert. Lee Ho-young felt this person was very trustworthy. In the future, he would be of great help. Before he could speak, he saw On Se-chang bow deeply. This time, it was an apology. He apologized to Lee Ho-young for having doubted and underestimated him. Following On Se-chang, many other players also apologized. It seemed that after this mission, they were truly won over by Lee Ho-young's abilities. This scene made him a bit uneasy. Ha ha ha, you guys are truly blind, unable to see a person's true potential. You should be like me, joining the Lee Ho-young express train. From a distance, Kim Se-young started laughing loudly, proudly patting his chest to discover his boss's talent. Apologize, I was the first to notice how capable he is. Chai Yi-sol, not to be outdone, began to claim credit. I'm currently warming up my ligaments, really want to bow down and apologize to him again. Next to her, Seo Jun-ho was crying, blaming himself once more for casting the first vote in the death mission. Lee Ho-young suddenly felt that these three were the most troublesome elements. It felt as if he alone had to shoulder the burden of these fools. Back to this side, On Se-chang was still bowing sincerely. After everything that happened, I know these words might seem shameless. But I hope that from now on, you can lead us. Lee Ho-young was a bit surprised that he could say such words. But after the surprise came joy and relief. Finally, he had managed to win them over. Alright, thank you all. With the mission complete, 12 players survived. The system distributed the gold rewards based on contribution. Everyone received at least 500 gold. Kim Se-young received as much as 2,000 gold. This made him start to be extravagantly happy. Lee Ho-young, being the one with the most contribution, naturally received the most. He got 12,500 gold. But what was even better was that with more than 10,000 gold in rewards, his shop rank had increased as well. Now Lee Ho-young could purchase higher level items. Originally, he thought he would buy a new weapon. But instead, he spent 5,000 gold to buy a level 3 skill enhancement pack. The goal was to upgrade his basic sword skills. After the shopping was done, Lee Ho-young gave 1,200 gold to Cha Yi-sol. She seemed puzzled. But Lee Ho-young felt this was the money she deserved. From when they ran out to fight the kobolds to encountering the doppelgangers, Cha Yi-sol had always unconditionally supported Lee Ho-young. That was also the basis for his victory. In this place, they had to kill each other and trample on each other to survive. Players were always envious, even humiliating each other, but Cha Yi-sol always followed Lee Ho-young unconditionally. She might seem useless, but she was a significant support and source of motivation for him. Seeing Lee Ho-young trust her like this, Cha Yi-sol was so moved that she almost cried. Lee Ho-young, I will strive to become stronger. Cha Yi-sol quickly used the money she received to upgrade her healing hands skill to level 2. After that, Lee Ho-young shared 200 gold with Kim Se-young. It was indeed the difference between an adopted child and a biological one. Lee Ho-young originally just wanted to encourage him a bit. As long as Kim Se-young didn't cause trouble, that was already a big help. Unexpectedly, just with this 200 gold, Kim Se-young was so touched he volunteered to be his loyal dog. This appearance made Lee Ho-young want to unleash carnage. Soon, the third floor mission began. This time, a siege war would start. According to the system, here, for the first time, players would meet players from other regions. Lee Ho-young's team was assigned as the attacking team. The condition to complete the mission was to lead the team to destroy the castle and occupy the base within 24 hours. The penalty for mission failure had not yet been revealed but was surely not going to be easy. Lee Ho-young and the other players received an item called Crystal Rebirth. This was a limited time item and could only be used on the third floor of the tower. They seemed quite unhappy since this mission meant they would have to kill people to complete it. While everyone was still discussing, Lee Ho-young was busy examining the function of the crystal. Kim Se-young, hearing his beloved boss call him, brightened his eyes. But when he turned around, he was met with Lee Ho-young's murderous face. Moreover, he was holding a sword. You will do everything I ask, right? To outsiders, it seemed like Lee Ho-young had gone mad. But unexpectedly, he was just testing the crystal's function. Indeed, Kim Se-young was used as a test subject. On the third floor, the crystal rebirth would return the player to the starting point whenever they were defeated. This meant that on this floor, they wouldn't die. After confirming this, Lee Ho-young sent Kim Se-young to scout the castle. The cost to hire him for this was also cheap, 100 gold. As soon as he reached the castle gate, Kim Se-young punched it hard, reducing the gate's durability to 81%, and after the next punch to 62%. The third punch brought it down to 40%, the fourth to 19%, and after the fifth punch, the gate was shattered. Kim Se-young wore a victorious smile. He chuckled because he thought this weak gate had no chance against his strength. But before he had taken more than 3 steps inside, Kim Se-young suddenly felt a sharp pain in his head. He collapsed, and the last blurry image he saw was a red-haired woman holding a gun. This is the crucial intelligence Kim Se-young brought back. This made Lee Ho-young somewhat worried. Bro, that thing fires some kind of ghost bullet, it hurts so much I feel like I'm going to hell. Kim Se-young kept rambling on, and Lee Ho-young felt this situation was insane. A gun isn't a weapon you can obtain in this place. Even on Se-chang, a level 9 player with a warrior profession, doesn't have a gun as a weapon. A thought suddenly crossed Lee Ho-young's mind, which was also the most likely possibility. That is, the person might be an elite assassin. Once someone agrees to become an elite assassin, they can acquire both legendary equipment and skills. This made him both anxious and troubled. This battle was going to be tough. Seeing Lee Ho-young frowning deeply, Cha Yi-sol couldn't help but reassure him. Don't worry, I'm here to support you, hang in there. Behind them, Seo Jun-ho and Kim Se-young were also not to be outdone. All the players were ready to stand by Lee Ho-young in this tough fight. Because of this, he quickly regained his composure. And a plan quickly formed in his mind.